The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. I'm Jamison Rabbit, and this week I'm so happy to be joined once again by my good friend, Mr. Steve Sabatke. Welcome back, sir.
Well, on behalf of my fans, both of them, thanks for having me back.
Good, good. We're building that fan base.
Yes, building it up slowly.
So I had to have Steve on this week because it is the time of the year where we finally get a chance to look back on 2021 and the year it was in films. And this week, the two of us are going to be talking about our most disappointing films of the last year, and we're going to crown our number one worst film of 2021. And so that's pretty exciting. But first, we got to talk about some movies that are out currently, and I'm going to get us started right away with what we have on the marquee. This week, it is The 355, directed by Simon Kinberg. It is a thriller starring a bunch of well-known actresses. The main one is Jessica Chastain. She is Mason, who is a specially trained CIA agent who, along with her partner, you see they're played by Sebastian Stan, her partner who she has fallen for, go on a mission. And terrorists have stolen a device which can hack into any computer network in the world, and oh my gosh, what could happen then? Mason realizes that she must team up with other female operatives, each with a specialty, and that is where we bring in Lupita Nyong'o. Bing Bing fan, we get Diane Kruger and Penelope Cruz join the team, each with a specialty. Things go awry, and then it kind of becomes your standard spy film. You saw there from the people who brought you Jason Bourne. It felt like they recycled the Jason Bourne script. You have a lot of the standard cliches, some well-trodden European locales. If you've ever seen a Bourne movie or anything of its ilk, you know what's coming in this movie. It's kind of a paint-by-numbers plot with an above-average talented cast. I really enjoy Jessica Chastain, and Lupita Nyong'o, she is one of my favorite actresses. And for me, like Penelope Cruz, my mileage varies on her. I thought she was an odd choice in this film. But they didn't really break into anything new, any new territory with this.
No, I mean, you pretty much, I don't even know what more I can add to that. I mean, when I first saw the trailer for this some time ago, I was pretty intrigued because these are five well-respected, accomplished actresses who have done a lot of great work.
Absolutely.
And so now they're all together in this action film that looks like it's not going to be another Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And I was really looking forward to watching it, and just like you said, it's pretty unremarkable. I mean, you don't really get to know the characters that these women play. You get a little bit of background, but there's not a lot to really care about.
Really surface level.
I figured out who one of the bad guys is going to be pretty early on in the movie, and I'm kind of dumb when it comes to that, but I figured it out. The action scenes, there's nothing real innovative here. I mean, how many times have we seen chases through the streets of Morocco?
Yeah, exactly. And one of my pet peeves, it was kind of really popularized in the Bourne franchise, is the shaky cam during the action sequences. And the first action sequence here, it is shaky cam all over the place. And I'm like, oh, come, we're doing everything.
I mean, and I long for the old days when, the hero had to do some work in order to find the bad guy.
Yeah.
Here it says, get out the laptop, get in some type of a tracking program, hit a few keys, and boom, hey, he's in Morocco. I mean, there's one tense, dramatic moment, which I'm obviously not going to reveal, that I didn't see coming, that occurs about 2/3 of the way into the film. But that was about it. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of dramatic tension with this at all.
The one thing I didn't realize that I needed was I loved seeing Lupita Nyong'o running around firing a machine gun, something I hadn't seen before.
Yeah,
like, okay, that's great.
That was new.
I mean, there's some stupid things, like literally as they're about to make their final plan for the final action chunk of the movie, Luckily, they just stumble upon a huge weapons cache in a room. I mean, it was literally like, hey, guys, check this out. Everything that we need for this
Everything
plan.
we need, yeah.
It was so silly. I felt like everyone in this deserved a better film, a better script.
And of course it ends in a way where you think there's going to be a sequel.
Oh, if only.
I mean they dumped this during the early January. That's kind of like the kiss of death for these types of movies. Yeah, it is. So
I think that Simon Kinberg as a director could have done so much more with these characters.
Yeah.
Developed them, given them something. Like you said, you really don't know or really care about a lot of them, unfortunately. So, the 3.55. What did you end up giving this film?
I didn't give it 3.55. I gave it 2.5. It really is a missed opportunity. I mean, you got 5 great actresses here that have made a lot of great work.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's on their resumes, and it just was a real disappointment to me.
Yeah, I concur with you on it. I gave it 2.5 stars. It's not bad. It's unoriginal. It's got great stars and nothing going on. And so it's a very forgettable movie. And thus it gets the forgettable 2.5 star score from me. Let's move on to what we have on our streaming spotlight this week. Sir, what do you have for us?
Well, it's The Tender Bar, directed by George Clooney. You may have heard of him. It's on Amazon Prime. Now, this movie's based upon the 2005 memoir of the same name by a writer by the name of J.R. Moringer, who won the Pulitzer Prize for newspaper writing in 2000. And it's a coming-of-age story that recounts his life growing up on Long Island. The first half of the film focuses on J.R. as a child, played by Daniel Ranieri. He's raised by a single mother, played by Lily Rabe. And they have to move into his grandfather's house as J.R.'s father, who's a New York disc jockey, who's, I guess, known as The Voice.
The Voice.
Really has nothing to do with his son. So also living in that house is his Uncle Charlie, who's played by Ben Affleck, who acts as kind of a surrogate father to J.R. Uncle Charlie runs a local bar called the Dickens. And he teaches J.R. about the man sciences and tells him that he should forget about sports. Says, you're not going to be an athlete, you should become a writer instead. And his mother insists that J.R. is going to go to Yale to become a lawyer. That's the first half of the film. And then the second half of the film focuses on a grown-up J.R. played by Ty Sheridan. I think he was in The Card Counter.
He was, yes.
Yeah. He does go to Yale. They must have got one heck of a scholarship. He gets a job as a copywriter for the New York Times, and he tries to start a serious relationship with a classmate, and it's here where the movie really started to lose its hold on me. I thought the movie worked when it focused on the family. The grandfather's played by the great Christopher Lloyd, and there's a great scene where he goes to a father-son breakfast at J.R.'s school, and then after that, he pretty much disappears.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to the grandfather?
Yeah.
Did he die? I don't know. So I wanted to see more of him. I wanted to see more about the mother. You don't even know anything about the grandmother. It just, the family part worked for me. When it got to this relationship, which JR is trying to pursue with this classmate who's just kind of stringing him along for fun until she can dump him after a while, then I got lost. I thought, now I'm losing interest in this one.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I was kind of hooked in on the first half of it. I was really enjoying it. I think Ben Affleck was really good as Uncle Charlie.
I do.
The uncle dispensing advice between pulls on a cigarette. I enjoyed their interactions between he and the young JR. When we got to the older portion of it, I lost interest. And I was kind of, there's some fun performances in here, and I wanted to stay hooked into this. And I like Ty Sheridan. I just didn't feel like I was given enough to care. And when it felt like not enough happened with him in the end, the film ended, and I thought to myself, was that it?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't go anywhere with this.
And you got to read the memoir, I guess.
And so I thought that the interesting part was the bar and the patrons in there, but I thought that the bar should have had a better atmosphere because it felt like it was the same scene over and over again. He goes into the bar, Charlie gives advice, all the guys go, back him up on me, okay, we do that again, and it's kind of wash and repeat. And I don't know. I mean, the other thing is Ty Sheridan as the grown-up JR. He's had a lot of tragedies in his life that have befallen him. And he kind of is unemotional about everything until the very, very end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he shows no emotion throughout. And that kind of frustrated me. It felt like lackluster direction from George Clooney to me, that it just wasn't a cohesive story.
You know, I felt a connection to this movie because when I was a kid, my grandfather ran a tavern in Beaver Dam. Mm-hmm. And I can remember going to it and thinking that, boy, this is such a great place.
These are the coolest people.
Yeah, as you're a kid and you walk in and they got the sounds and the jukebox playing and the lighting, and behind the bar you got all the bottles and the cans on the shelves and the colors and all the beer signs that are up and the regulars that were always there, although I don't remember the regulars that were there speaking in the language that you hear in this movie.
Sure.
But that brought back some really nice memories for me. I felt a real connection for that. And when JR was in that environment with Uncle Charlie, who I guess Ben Affleck just got nominated for a SAG award for this, and I know some people are kind of grousing over that, thinking, oh, come on. I thought Ben Affleck was really good.
He was by far the best part of this movie.
Yeah, he is. When it was on the family part, I thought, hey, this is good. I like this. I like where it's going. But then when it was away from that, it lost me.
One other thing, a choice that George Clooney made with this movie that kind of is a huge pet peeve of mine is he decided to go with a voiceover narration through this movie. And we find out at the end who it was. But for me, it gives it a Wonder Years feel or an Arrested Development, a TV feel. Mm-hmm. It made it feel cheap to me, and I never we watched another movie earlier this year. I believe you and I did Reminiscence that did the same thing. Yeah. Let's do a voiceover, and it just never works for me in films. Very, very rarely, and it definitely didn't work in here. I'm just not a fan of it. And so I enjoyed a lot of the acting in this film. I just felt like it felt watered down a lot in the second half.
And didn't you want to see more of Christopher Lloyd?
I did.
I mean, he comes off as this grouchy guy.
Because he's like in the opening scene, he's an interesting grandpa.
Yeah, I mean, he's yelling at the mother about, go get some more child support from your deadbeat husband and that kind of thing. And then he
checked out.
Yeah, he goes to this father-son breakfast, and he's the life of the breakfast. Everybody loves him. And then
bye, movie.
He's gone. And I'm like, what happened to him?
Yeah, I agree. What did you end up giving the Tender Bar?
I gave it 3.5 stars. That might be a little bit on the high side. But most of it's pretty good. Again, I thought it was much more interesting when it was JR as a child and with the family and with the bar.
Yeah, I gave it 2.5. Tune in for Affleck. I think Daniel Ranieri was good as the young JR.
Yeah, he's good.
But don't get your hopes up for how it's going to wrap up, because it's just going to kind of sputter to an end on you. All right, speaking of movies that have been maybe disappointments on the year, it's time for us to look back on the year that was in 2021, and we're going to talk about our top 5 most disappointing movies. We watch movies that are good and bad, and a lot of times I watch bad movies that I know are going to be bad. And I feel it's unfair a lot of times to just harp on bad movies. But the bigger sin is to overpromise and underdeliver. And so that is why we are talking about our top 5 biggest disappointments in film in 2021. And I want you to start with your number 5 most disappointing film.
Are we calling these the rabbits? Is that what these are?
Maybe.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, number 5 for me was one you just mentioned, Reminiscence.
Oh, I'm so glad this is on your list.
I mean, what do you get when you try to combine film noir with Blade Runner, Minority Report, a little bit of Waterworld, and a dark and moody Hugh Jackman? Well, you get a complicated mess that I had to stop and rewind several times because I was watching it on HBO Max to try to figure out exactly what was going on.
Yes.
I mean, there's this memory contraption in the film. I wanted to actually use that to erase the memory of watching this movie.
Yes.
It just was not a fun watch at all.
This was on my long list that I started writing down because I agree with you 100%. So I'm glad we had a chance to mention this one. My number 5 most disappointing film of the year was a film that came out in March of last year. Feels like so long ago. It's a film called Cherry. It was directed by the Russo brothers, coming off of the success of the Avengers movie. Stars Tom Holland, our newest Spider-Man. I was very excited for this film, especially coming out after a time of a lot of just doldrum films. A film that had a lot going for it, but it felt like all flash and no substance to the story about a guy who was drifting through life, joined the military, got out of it, joined this codependent relationship where he and his girlfriend were hooked on heroin together, and suddenly a misunderstood guy became a bad guy, became a bank robber, just a real dirtbag. Never connected to anyone in this movie, never connected to his struggles, didn't care if anyone in this movie lived or died. It was really disappointing, and it was really, really long, too.
How long was it?
It was 2 hours. I believe, off memory, it was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh,
Felt
wow.
like 5 hours. It was one of those movies that I paused multiple times, like, you've got to be kidding me. They can't keep doing this. I ended up giving it, I remember at the time I gave it 1.5 stars. It was a big disappointment because of the talent level involved, and I think that's going to be a running theme today. But Cherry is my number 5.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it.
Don't need to.
but-
You're good.
I'm good.
What's your
Okay.
number 4?
Well, number 4 for me is, and I'm sorry, kids, it's Space Jam: A New Legacy. I mean, I like LeBron James. I liked him in the movie Trainwreck, but this movie is a train wreck. I mean, I remember taking my daughter to the theater to see the first Space Jam with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And we really liked it. We thought, it was something different. It was good. Bill Murray was in it. It was funny. This is just the complete opposite of that. I mean, let's end this franchise now before the next one stars Aaron Rodgers.
Oh boy, don't put that out in the universe.
I mean, at some point during, of course, they got to play basketball for LeBron to get his son back, and then there's something to do with saving again, the cartoon characters.
Of course.
Like the last one, but
Who could even care?
during the basketball game, they got all these different characters from all the Warner Brothers movies watching the basketball game.
It is ad placement.
Yeah, and one of them is, what's the name of the clown from It?
Pennywise.
Pennywise is in
Sure,
in
why
there
wouldn't he
watching
be?
this, and I'm thinking, why are all these other Warner Brothers characters tackling this guy and taking care of him once and for all?
Yeah.
It was a real disappointment. I mean, LeBron, right now, stick to basketball.
Not a good movie for sure.
No.
My number 4 is a movie that just came out recently. Just reviewed it a few weeks ago. Kind of divisive. Some people seem to love this movie, but for me, it was a huge disappointment. It's Adam McKay's new film, Don't Look Up, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Cate Blanchett. I mean, it is a deep, deep cast of great actors. Prestige names involved had me excited. Adam McKay, who has won his film The Big Short, won a ton of accolades. But for me, it fell really far short of what it needed to be. I thought it was a mediocre satire on a lot of levels, really broad, talking about political climate control, celebrity news, and a lot of bits in here. But I felt like at the end of the day that he didn't say anything. And it felt like a really mediocre satire. And with that list of names and a director who has done explained really dense things before with The Big Short and even Vice, I felt like this just felt like, at the time I called it a middle-of-the-road Mel Brooks parody.
Well, now I don't feel so bad because I really didn't like this
Really?
either. No.
Everyone I've talked to
I
is like,
felt
"You're
bad
crazy, I
because
loved
it's
it."
getting all these accolades, and I'm going, what did I miss? Have I
Yeah.
missed something? It's not on my list. It's close. But I thought this is not, I enjoyed The Big Short, but
Yeah.
this is like,
All right.
way over the top.
Good. I
satire.
got some backup on this
Yeah,
one. Well, good. So
yeah.
Don't Look Up is my number 4. Your number 3 most disappointing film?
Cry Macho.
Oh, boy.
I mean, far be it from me to tell Clint Eastwood to hang it up. But Clint, make sure I'm looking into the camera. And it's not on me now. Okay.
He's
Clint,
looking at you.
Clint, if you're watching, I think it's time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Sending a 90-year-old ex-rodeo star into Mexico to kidnap a young boy and his rooster from the clutches of his mother who has ties to the drug cartel, I wasn't buying any of that. Then part of the movie is they hide out in this Mexican village, and Clint establishes a relationship with this woman that's in the village who's hiding
All
them.
the ladies throw themselves at Clint.
Yeah, I mean, come on. So cry macho. I mean, for me, cry no more, no more.
Yeah, I agree. That was a very underwhelming film. We don't need any more of that. My number 3 film, kind of interesting, a film that came out in June. It's a sequel to a surprisingly lovely movie that came out a few years back. It's Peter Rabbit 2. Yeah, I know.
You're
right?
going after the rabbit?
Look, I really, really enjoyed the first Peter Rabbit movie, and I believe this might have been the first episode you were on.
Yes, this was the first movie that got me back into the theaters.
Yeah, and the original pulled off the impossible for me. That it made me, it made James Corden tolerable. This one had me excited, and this just had a story to me that was really pretty poor. A story about a big book publisher trying to get B to sell out, and it got big and broad with the comedy, and just lost a lot of the fun interplay between the characters that I liked so much about the first one. And the characters that I did enjoy were actually really annoying in this film, and it lost a lot of the clever humor. The first one had some jokes that were for our audience, for our age. This one seemed like it was made for toddlers, and maybe I'm just not the audience.
Well, I mean, I also thought, I think I brought this up when we reviewed it, I thought it was kind of on the violent side, too.
There was a lot of that,
Yeah.
and it just I didn't think a Peter Rabbit sequel would make this list, but I did enjoy the first one, and this one was kind of a stinker for me.
Oh, man, you're breaking the hearts of all the kids out there
Sorry,
that are
guys.
watching right now. Not Peter Rabbit.
Yep, he got it. All right, you're number 2, sir.
It's a musical called Music. Now, 2021 was the year of the musical. Most of them were pretty good. This was not one of them. Music was directed by pop star Sia, and it stars Kate Hudson as a drug addict and drug dealer who's forced to take care of her autistic sister. That's the plot of the musical. And then setting aside all the backlash that this movie got from the autism community, and it got a lot, it's just a bad film. The musical numbers, I think, were fantasies of the sister who had autism. They were more of a showcase for Sia's songs than they were. They really didn't have anything to do with the movie itself. It seemed like there was just two different courses that this film was taking, and it was a mess. From start to finish.
A movie I did not see.
You didn't see this one?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like I ducked one.
Yeah, I mean, it made headlines when it came out.
I read those. Yeah, maybe that's what didn't draw me to it. But all right, music number 2. My number 2 is Halloween Kills. This was an incredibly stupid film, and that's saying a lot. But I actually enjoyed the reboot that came out a few years back, and this movie demanded that you be as stupid as the characters, and I'm not willing to do that. A lot of laughable moments in here where there shouldn't have been. Motivations for pretty much everyone involved in this movie that made no sense to me. We watched this at home, my wife and I, and our viewing turned into a Mystery Science Theater viewing.
You guys just cracking jokes about it? Okay.
Yeah, it was ridiculous because it's such a stereotypical bad horror sequel. I don't know why I expected more, but coming off the previous film, this one really under-delivered, and it made me not care if they're making any more of these. Of course, they're going to keep making more.
I read they were going to make another
absolutely.
one. Yeah,
but I don't care because this movie stunk, and so for the high hopes it gave me and what it delivered, it's my number 2 most disappointing film of the year. Your number 1 most disappointing film.
Well, it's Red Notice. I mean, if you're looking for an action movie that has all the action scenes that you've seen countless times before, this one's for you. Plus, it's got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot, who contribute absolutely nothing to the film other than getting a massive paycheck.
Yes.
It's on Netflix. It's awful.
This was my honorable mention, yes. This was very close to making my list because that movie was terrible.
Bad.
My number 1, there was a film that came out this time last year, last January. And it's called The Little Things, directed by John Lee Hancock, who has made a bunch of great movies. This movie stars Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. Denzel is a detective who's hunting down a serial killer he's been obsessed with for years. Rami Malek is the young detective who joins him, and we get this old school versus new school for a lot of the movie. It is a film that lacked tension, lacked a coherent final act. That the final act was really ruined anything that might have been going for this film. And Denzel, I mean, he's one of the all-time greats, returning to a genre that I love him in, like The Bone Collector. And all
Yeah,
these
he's
films
done
like
this before.
He's great. And so I had huge hopes. And this was coming in January, probably the first film of the year that I had any kind of excitement for because of who was involved in it. And Rami Malek was actually really bad in this film, which was surprising. The film should have been great, and there were small glimpses of great in tiny moments, but it left a really horrible taste in my mouth in the end and how this film was resolved. It's not the worst film of the year, but it is my biggest disappointment because of who was involved and what we ended up walking away with. So for me, it's The Little Things, big disappointment.
Didn't see it.
Now, really quickly, we have each of our single worst film of the year, the film that we thought was the worst thing we saw. What's your worst film of the year?
Well, I don't know if it's worse, but it definitely was the biggest disappointment because I had such high expectations, and that is The Many Saints of Newark, which is the Sopranos prequel. I love The Sopranos, fantastic TV series, but to me this was just a standard gangster movie. I was so disappointed after watching it. I think the producers of this movie tried to cram what should have been a TV series into a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
I could have cared less about Dickie Moltisanti, Christopher's father, and Tony Soprano as a teenager didn't intrigue me either. I just was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, I entertained so much by the Sopranos series. This movie
Underdelivered.
didn't like it at all.
For sure.
Definitely underdelivered.
My worst film of the year is a film that you mentioned on your list earlier. It is Space Jam: A New Legacy. A giant product placement of a film for every Warner Brothers property. A CGI nightmare that felt like a fever dream in parts of it. I mean, Don Cheadle in this as Al G. Rhythm. You deserve better, Don Cheadle. Come on.
I'm still not even sure what he played. A computer virus?
This movie left me wondering which was the worst actor, LeBron James or cartoon LeBron James. It made me reminisce for those halcyon days of the original Space Jam because this movie was just a huge mess. Also, by the way, the Looney Tunes don't even show up until like halfway into this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, everyone left. Bugs has to go find everyone because they left the universe. They also looked awful, the Looney Tunes. They come back as lifelike 3D incarnations of themselves. That was kind of terrifying. The movie was just unwatchable, and a massive waste of my time, the cast and crew's time, Bugs Bunny's time. Just no thank you.
Bugs deserves better.
He does deserve better.
He does.
So there you go, the movie I hated the most this year. Let's take a look real quickly at what is coming soon. We have The King's Daughter will be coming out. It is a family fantasy about a king who's stealing a mermaid's life force to gain eternal life. Stars Pierce Brosnan as the king.
Okay.
This might make a list next year. Munich, The Edge of War. This is a streaming film, a historical drama about a British diplomat traveling to Munich at the run-up to World War II to attempt negotiations with his German counterpart. Stars George McKay and Jeremy Irons. Those are the movies coming out.
Okay.
It's getting rough in January.
Slim pickings.
Before we move further, we want to thank our sponsor, Little Marcus Theaters, the Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for sponsoring this program. Thank you for providing a dream lounger for my butt to sit in on a regular basis. We do appreciate that. Next week, I'm going to be joined once again by my partner, Mr. Steve Sabaki. We're going to be talking about films such as Tragedy of Macbeth, Scream, and then, most importantly, we're going to be counting down our top 10 best films of 2021. You got to tune in for that. It's got to be better than this. That's all going to be happening next week.
All right.
You'll be back in the seat. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been really working on that list.
Oh, that's good.
Just for you, just for this show.
I've been honing it, crafting it, molding it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get it wrong.
And it was a pretty decent year. I mean, other than what we just talked about, it was a good year.
Get that out of the way. Then we'll talk about some good things.
Yeah,
so
it was a good year.
That's all going to be happening next week, so make sure to tune in for that. But until that time, I'm Jamison.
And I'm Steve.
Thanks for watching.
Okay.